Hello, and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Mark Florence.
And today we're talking about Dead Calm. Mark, you apparently never saw this movie, but you recommended it to me, and I'm like, duh.
Yeah, I don't even know how I found out about this movie. I think I was, reading an article about, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise's marriage or something, and it, mentioned this, thriller, Deep Calm from, her first movie in 1989. I'm like, oh, it sounds interesting. So I kept bothering Kelly to watch it, and she finally watched it.
So obviously I've already seen it, but this is also not her first movie, but it's her first Australian movie that gained some traction.
It's an Australian movie?
Obviously.
It's not obvious, but I just figured it was an American film.
It's not. Billy Zane is the only American in it. Nicole Kidman's from Australia and Sam Neill's from New Zealand.
So there's 1/3 American, 1/3 New Zealand, 1/3 Australian.
And it's obviously an Australian film.
So if we find out where Benji the dog is from, that could really change everything.
Okay, wow. So as we were watching this, I literally tweeted out movie villain versus actual villain, which is that meme. Because, so P.S. Obviously, Billy Zane is the actual villain, but if Benji the dog had not existed, I think they would have been able to get away from Billy Zane much earlier, because Benji kept being problematic and he brought the key back and then he alerted them to, or alerted Billy or alerted whoever multiple times and boo.
Yeah, Benji kept screwing everything up for Nicole Kidman and Sam Neill. Don't remember. Oh, Ray is her name. Yeah, Benji, she threw the keys to the boat away and it was gone. But then, of course, Benji had to go fetch him. So yeah, but and Benji faked her out. She thought she had shot a harpoon into Billy Zane through a door, but she actually killed her dog.
And so, also, if Benji didn't exist, she would have realized that she hadn't killed Billy Zane and would have been able to, would have not opened the door because the harpoon didn't kill anyone.
Yeah, unfortunately, Benji's blood looked a lot like Billy Zane's blood, so... Probably.
So are you going to become a vegetarian now because you realize that animals are just like humans?
I'm not. I won't eat dogs.
That's fair. This movie came out in 1989. I think it's 83% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and it barely made back its budget. Actually, it didn't make back its budget.
What was its budget?
$11.5 million, and it made $11.2 million.
How could you spend $11 million on that?
Look it up.
There's 3 actors, basically. 2 boats. And that's literally it.
Think about all the crew, though, Mark. Look it up. I'm serious. Go, just literally right now, Google Dead Calm. You don't have your phone? And look up the Wikipedia knowledge on budget and box office, because it didn't make back its budget, which is fine. I was saying I think it probably gained notoriety later because Sam Neill later starred in Jurassic Park. Nicole Kidman, after this, starred in Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise, who became her husband. And Billy Zane, of course, gained notoriety probably most famously for being the bad guy in Titanic. Another boat movie, Mark.
Yeah, it's like another isolation movie. We've talked, I keep saying this on this podcast, but we've talked about a lot of island movies where you're just stuck in this environment. And this was another one. You're just in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. on a sailboat.
Can you be more specific? Just kidding.
I can be more Pacific. Yeah, because Billy Zane supposedly was trying to go to Fiji. So yeah, that's how I knew they're in the Pacific Ocean. But but yeah, there's just isolated out there, just out in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's nowhere to turn. There's no one that can help you. You're on your own. You got to figure it out for yourself.
So, speaking of Fiji, the thing that I think of whenever I hear Fiji or when I see Fiji water in the store or in a commercial or whatever is the movie The Truman Show, and how Jim Carrey's actual love interest, not Laura Linney, who was his fake love interest, but his actual love interest, who was Sloane from Ferris Bueller, she had that pin on that said, "How will it end?" And she was like, maybe I just want to go to Fiji or whatever. And, you know, they loved each other, but they couldn't be together because it wasn't in the reality show, quote unquote, plot line. Do you remember that movie, Mark?
True Man? Yes, I do, yeah. People oftentimes criticize it for being too obvious in their, their symbolism, I guess. But, you know, True Man. He's a Truman. Okay,
so I'm going to go down this rabbit hole now because we're talking about Jim Carrey. Do you remember that? I cannot remember the name of the movie, but where he has amnesia. What is the name of that movie? Oh, The Majestic.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Well, guess what? Guess who's in it? Bruce Campbell. And you know what else Bruce Campbell is known for?
Being a poor man's Billy Zane?
No. Billy Zane is a poor man's Bruce Campbell because apparently, I don't know if this is confirmed or not. One of these two statements is true and one of them is not, or it's a rumor. But apparently Bruce Campbell auditioned for Titanic and lost out to the part to Billy Zane. The other part that I think is confirmed is that he was Bruce Campbell was supposed to be the Phantom, the superhero, and Billy Zane got the part. And as I said to Mark earlier, I'm like, okay, so P.S., 100% Bruce Campbell could have played this role in this movie and killed it in 1989. But also, who's showing up to events every weekend and having sold out crowds currently?
Bruce Campbell?
Yeah, it's not Billy Zane. No offense, Billy Zane. He hasn't been in a lot recently, Mark. He was in the Zoolander not prequel, sequel, and he hasn't done a lot since. Billy Zane, we love you. You're freaking gorgeous and whatever, and you know I love you in Demon Knight. But Bruce Campbell, I think you've been robbed.
I respect what you're saying, but I think Billy Zane, I don't think Bruce auditioned for this role of the bad guy in Dead Calm, but I think Billy Zane killed it, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
I think that's fair, and like I said earlier, and like you just reiterated, yeah, Bruce wasn't up for this role, but I feel like he could have killed it.
He could have killed it. We were doing some research during the movie. Bruce is 10 years older than Billy. Billy was 23 years old during this movie. I don't think he wore a shirt the entire time. And
P.S. Thank you.
And Kelly kept saying he's glistening because he was just sweaty the whole time.
He was beautiful, but it doesn't make him less problematic in his characterization, which is spot on. Okay, he's a psychopath, he's a murderer, he's a rapist, he's not okay. But also, I can step back from his character and say, oh wow, Billy Zane, looks like a Greek god.
Yeah, he's obviously been working out, doing, core work. So yeah, I mean, so we did some research. Sam Neill is now 72.
It's like today.
Yeah, in 2020. Nicole Kidman is 53. And Zane, I think he's 54 or something like that. So during the movie, Sam Neill was 41, and he's married to 22-year-old Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. So this is very typical, though, of Hollywood movies. I mean, at least back in the day, sometimes still today, but hopefully not as much anymore. But yeah, like 20 years your junior, and that's okay. Like, that's actually kind of weird.
No, I'm just saying that was their actual ages, like the actors' ages. I don't know. They never like said how old they were supposed to be. So I had a, kind of a question. In the beginning of the movie, like, he's coming back on a boat from like the military or whatever, and like his wife and kid aren't there. It turns out his son died in a car accident. But honestly, that really doesn't come back into play at all. So I was kind of wondering why they even chose to do that.
Truth. And like, they set up this backstory to like justify that they were on this boat together, but honestly, it didn't matter. Like, I mean, couldn't they just be on a boat together? That's
what I was thinking. Like, why couldn't they have just been on a boat together, like sailing? Like, they both like sailing, and then this thing happens. Like, why does it have to be they're getting over the death of their infant son who like dropped his teddy bear in their car and like got out of his car seat and like forced her into a car accident? Because it honestly barely came back into play. Like, the only way it came back into play was like she was on this like medication that Sam Neill didn't want her to take, but then she ended up using it against Billy Zane to like drug him. That's like basically the only way it came back into play, and like the only time they ever mentioned it again.
That is 100% truth. So yeah, like, I mean, I appreciate that they gave them a backstory, and that, they're not just these hollow people. At the same time, did it have to be so tragic? Because, it could be like, oh, I can't fall asleep. Like, should I take a sleeping pill? And like, no, just try to fall asleep on your own, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they could have just started the movie with them going on this trip or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, they didn't go super deep into the characters, and I felt like it didn't really define who like Nicole Kidman was as a character throughout the movie, really. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And so something that this movie reminded me of, and spoiler alert a tiny bit if you haven't seen the movie Adrift, but Shailene Woodley, is that her name?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it doesn't matter. And oh my goodness, Sam Claflin? Like, wow, I'm such an old woman. I can't remember actors' names.
I feel like you're just making up names at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty much truth. But it's based on this true story. And what I'm telling you is that a woman can be a badass in this sailing situation and be hardcore and like, survive. And Mark, I'm already afraid of water pretty much because I'm not a great swimmer. I respect sailing, but I have no desire or urge, or I don't have the balls to like follow through with sailing in any way, shape, or form.
We'll probably just have to what about Bob you and tie you up to the mast then if you're going to sail.
I get that reference and I refuse.
Okay. And I also have to say a surprise anniversary present was a sailing excursion on Lake Superior, but I guess we won't be doing that.
Yeah, right. You're lying because you think it's funny, but no, thank you. Like anything on the water, like pretty much no. Like I think mainly because I'm a bad swimmer, but like I don't even enjoy boating. Like it makes me nervous because I think about if I get thrown off, I'm definitely going to die.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, water can be very dangerous. Especially like rivers with currents and, you know, all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to like swim in a lake or whatever, but drowning, like unfortunately, I forgot her name, the lady from Glee, that was unfortunate.
Oh my God, Naya Rivera. I know, and that's the truth though, and it happens, and I'm so sorry. R.I.P. because I loved Glee. You know I did.
Yeah, and I can just picture because, you know, swimming off a pontoon, if it didn't have a ladder, a boat without a ladder, it's like really hard to get back up. And I don't know, I can just, you know, imagine what that must have been like.
So that happened to me. I was on a pontoon with friends and I could not get back up. There was no ladder, but thankfully there were two strong men to literally pull me back on. And if there hadn't been, there's no way I could have gotten back up by myself. So I understand, and what a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is, like, you know, I'm glad the child survived and had a life jacket on and all that, and I just feel terrible about the whole situation.
So yes, we are thinking of her son and her family and all of her fans because truly, what a tragedy. All right, so Mark, what else do you have to say about Dead Calm?
So I don't know if we truly talked about Sam Neill yet, but he's like the main guy from Jurassic Park. Like roughly 4 years before Jurassic Park, he looks basically the same. And he has some of the same looks throughout the movie, I felt like.
He's also in a very classic horror movie, In the Mouth of Madness. Have you watched that ever, Mark?
I've never heard of that movie.
Okay, so maybe that needs to be something that I will introduce you to because... I
have seen Jurassic Park, though.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. And, like, when he removes his sunglasses or removes her sunglasses, what is that moment which is so iconic?
In Jurassic Park, when he sees the dinosaurs the first time. I think he removes his sunglasses when he sees the dinosaurs.
And then he turns her head.
Yeah, he turns her head, yeah.
Oh, so good. And remember when he is literally, like, laying on that dino, like listening to the heartbeat and breathing.
Man, we should watch Jurassic Park and do a podcast on that.
So good. Okay, so guess what? I know it's not horror, but I've said this on the podcast before. My sister, who is 6 years my senior, slept on my parents' bedroom floor after seeing Jurassic Park for like a week because she was so terrified. And this is why, you know, we are all our own people, regardless of parenting. I was just like, no, that's awesome. And I wasn't scared at all, but she literally was scared.
So I heard a story on the radio, I think last week, that 90% of the science from that movie is fake. Like the little dinosaurs that spit venom and like their like collar like came out was like way off. They didn't spit venom. They were way bigger than they were in the movie. So, but yeah, I thought the Velociraptors were cool, and it was a good movie. So I would recommend Jurassic Park if you've never seen it.
No, okay, Mark. No, I guess what, I agree, and I also heard that, and like, okay, science, like it is evolving as everything in life, and we don't know, you know, things that actually were, and maybe all dinosaurs did have feathers like birds. But as we've said on this podcast before, the actual practical effects from Jurassic Park hold up compared to like CGI. Everyone's like, oh, the CGI in Jurassic Park was amazing. It's actually practical effects. So, yeah, pretty much awesome. All right, let's get back to Dead Calm.
Billy Zane's boat was named Orpheus, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that means. And you said you looked it up, but you wouldn't tell me. So maybe you can tell me now.
I didn't look it up, Mark. I already knew.
Oh. Well, okay, so you knew. So can you tell me what it means?
Okay, so Orpheus goes into the nether regions, like hell, basically, to find his love. So that's pretty dark, right?
Yeah, I felt like that must have meant something because they showed it. So,
I mean, it's dark, it's hell, and Billy Zane is a sociopath serial killer, and he murders everyone on that ship. Like, that's super dark. Mark, what are you figuring out about Orpheus?
So he was an ancient Greek legendary hero endowed with superhuman musical skills, but Billy Zane was singing and dancing at that one point.
He did love music, remember? He kept trying to play music.
Yeah, was he?
He kept playing the boombox, remember?
Oh, yeah, he kept playing music. It's a very long article. But yeah, we'll take Kelly's... So is that all related to Morpheus from the Matrix? Is that his name?
No, it's not.
Well, it's similar.
Orpheus and Morpheus rhyme. It doesn't mean they're similar. Like, arc and bark don't mean the same thing. Or maybe they do because they were both made out of wood.
No, but I mean, Orpheus and Morpheus are very distinct things. Arc and bark and mark are very anyway, whatever. I don't know if we want to go over the plot a little bit. They're just out there in their boat. It's called Dead Calm, so there's dead calm seas. After I think 32 days, they see another ship finally. So Sam Neill goes and tries to contact it, and then Billy Zane comes over in like a lifeboat kind of deal. And pretty much ever since then, the seas are not dead calm. They're turbulent seas. So I thought that was interesting.
It is. It's interesting because the seas turn rough, and yeah, it changes the tone. And so it's, a literal interpretation and also metaphoric. And also, as Mark mentioned, this plot line of, the death of their son, which was tragic and horrific, it all of a sudden takes a back seat and we never mention it again. Which, I guess part of it is like, okay, let's get some character backstory, because otherwise, how else was the movie going to start with a backstory, if not for this tragic event? So that gives them at least a little bit more humanity. But at the same time, like you said, it doesn't come into play. So, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. What do you think, Mark?
I felt like they could have just started with them on some boat trip. Some couple on a boat trip. Everyone can relate to that. We don't need to know that. Okay, so, and then when their young son dies, it's very disturbing. They're in the car, and then she like gets in like a, what do you call it? Not like a head-to-head collision with somebody. And she's wearing a seatbelt, the baby isn't. And the baby just like a head-on collision. The baby just flies through the windshield, and they show it like, okay, if this is going to come into play later, I get it, but it doesn't. So it's like, why?
Like you said, the only purpose that it serves, besides like giving them a backstory and humanizing them, which guess what? Everyone is a human. So, is that she's taking some sort of pills for it.
I agree with that, but I feel like she shows very little other things related to that. I feel like she's just who she is, or I don't know. I feel like, I'm sorry.
Besides the initial nightmare sequence where she wakes up and has that nightmare, there is no other post-traumatic experience being shown through her character. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you know what? You know why, Mark? Because this is based on a story, on a novel, and that's why.
Okay, so they had to try to adapt it. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. There was a little bit of possible like Stockholm syndrome going on, where Nicole Kidman had to like kind of pretend like she was into. I don't know how much we want to get into the plot. I already said that,
yeah,
but
we do.
The Sam Neill guy's off. He's off the boat. He's on Billy Zane's ship, which is sinking. Metaphorically, and literally. But so Nicole Kidman's on the boat with Billy Zane, and they just go. And Sam Neill almost gets back on the boat, but he gets actually hit by the prop and injured. So she's just on the boat alone with Billy Zane. So it's kind of this weird dynamic of like, you kind of know this guy's crazy, and you're stuck with him. But you kind of feel like if you pretend to like him and agree with him, like he won't be mean to you and like kill you. So you kind of have to do that.
Yeah. So I guess like as I'm thinking about it, Stockholm syndrome, quote unquote, isn't the correct term because that's when people actually relate to their captor. But this is playing along for the sake of trying to preserve your life. And so she goes along with it, and she goes up, like she pretends like, I'm going to sleep with you, but I need to go to the bathroom first. And she goes up and actually prepares a weapon, but she realizes that he's coming up. So she pretends that she went up to get cigarettes to smoke post-coital, and they end up having sex, and she's not into it, but she has to pretend to be. And oh my God, it's so dark and so gross and so tragic, so that's why, like, I know people have to do that in abusive relationships, in extreme situations like this one, and like play along in order to survive. And that is the horror of this movie.
So when Sam Neill was investigating the boat that Billy Zane was on, he found all these, all this weird stuff, and then he found some dead people, and he like found another person a little bit later who was just like floating there, and then Kelly said, "Is that William Dafoe?"
It kind of looked like him. Okay, but P.S. So this is the creepy thing, like. Billy Zane claimed, like, we got food poisoning and, like, I've been just, like, floating here and trying to survive. But no, he murdered everyone. And then there's this, like, video footage and, yeah, floating dead bodies that are, like, decapitated. But also, was that Willem Dafoe?
On a cast of 3 people, I find it hard to believe they would cast a 4th very famous actor to play a dead body for 2 seconds.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair. Wait, what did we just watch him in, though?
I feel like maybe you watched it? I don't know.
Yeah, I probably did. I've been watching a lot of stuff lately, and Mark has been working, 40 plus hours a week. I mean, so do I, but I've also been watching stuff.
You've been working hard at watching Netflix. Just kidding.
Working hard or hardly working? Remotely working or working remotely?
Exactly.
Shout out to Trey Kennedy, the stand-up, newly stand-up, but he's famous for his viral content.
Wait, who's Trey Kennedy again?
Remember I send you his videos all the time on Facebook.
Yeah. That guy's funny. Yep.
He's like, good for the tummy while you're getting a little dummy.
Yep, the hard kombucha.
Yeah.
How much do you think those 2 boats cost? Like, I was kind of thinking about that. Like, those are really huge, nice sailboats. I gotta imagine they'd be in the almost $1 million range.
So, did you look up the budget and box office? Did we already talk about this?
Maybe they blew their budget on like burning the boat.
That's basically what I'm telling you right now. Did we already confirm this?
Yeah, it was like 10. I think it cost 10.4 million and it made 10.2 million.
Yike. Yeah. No, truly though. I mean, these boats are like next level.
And especially the boat Billy Zane came off of, it literally looked like a pirate ship. Like, that thing must have been at least $1 million, even though it was sinking. And it was complete with like the wood carvings of like naked ladies, like under in the hull. Maybe is that called the hull? I don't know. But yeah, it's like a typical pirate ship. I thought it was a cool. So, Sam Neill's trying to communicate. He finally communicates with her through the radio, but he can't really talk. So he's just doing like these click things. So like, I think it was one click? Two clicks
for no, 1 click for yes. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, you're right. So she could hear him. But he couldn't talk. Mm-hmm. So he could hear hers, but so he would just do these clicks. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a cool way to like communicate, I thought. So he said his boat was sinking and she was trying to figure out how much time she had, and it turned out it was like 6 hours. But so he was down below trying to like, find something or do something, and he got stuck. Well, first of all, what are the chances that lightning hits the boat? It knocks a wooden thing, a wooden plank off of the mast, and then it goes through the thing and goes right where his door is. What do you think the chances of that are?
Mark, what would the plot be without that little tidbit?
I don't know. Maybe the door just could have jammed. I don't know. But so he's got to figure, like, his boat is filling up with water, and he's stuck in like below deck in this room, and it's finally getting to the point where he's about to die, and he just like grabs this pipe, and it turns out the pipe goes all the way up to where they're to like above, and he can breathe through it. So he's basically like snorkel breathing through this pipe for like an hour.
Do you remember when Billy Zane was on another sinking ship and he pretended that he was the father to some little child so that he could get off on a lifeboat? Like, he can go F himself.
So yeah, I'm sensing a theme here with Billy Zane in these these sinking ship movies.
But he's so great in The Phantom. But also, I would have preferred Bruce Campbell.
Is there any chance that this was like a sequel to Titanic which was made before Titanic, where Billy Zane is just sailing the 7 seas after the Titanic sinks, and he's killing people, and then he just comes into contact with these people?
Guess what? This is literally the post Demon Knight movie. So it's Titanic, Demon Knight, and then Dead Calm, even though those don't make sense in that order, because he becomes like a demon and he can like live forever. Yeah. And yeah, guess what? You dumbass.
Yeah, because they never really explained his character either. Like, he just like crazy? Like, he was like a photographer, like a videographer or something, but he's just this like crazy dude who like sails around and like kills people? Like, I guess.
So you know what? We have connected 3 separate movies, and this is our canon, friends. I mean, if you're willing to go along with us on this journey.
And then we also talked about the movie Overboard a little bit during this, and you said, what did you say?
Arturo, I remember. Okay, so I freaking love the movie Overboard, and I've said this on this podcast before, but do you remember how Kurt Russell tells Goldie Hawn the story of like Arturo, and I can't remember the other name, but she jumps off in order to meet him, and like, you know, they love each other and they meet each other in the sea, and that's what reminded me of these two. Like, they love each other, even though apparently he's old enough to be her father.
In this movie?
Yeah, remember? He's 20 years older than she is.
I thought you were talking about the other movie. I thought you were talking about Overboard, where man overboard is kissing woman overboard. It's a hell of a day at sea, sir.
Yes. Classic. I've said this before, but I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life and never get bored of it.
So there's a lot of classic lines in that film. So yeah, I love that movie. I never saw the remake. I probably never will. I don't want to ruin it.
Oh, Anna Faris, we're so sorry, but you know, at the same time, like, I appreciate the gender swap because that's cool, but I haven't watched it either.
I think Kate Hudson should have been in it. That would have been cool.
You know what? That actually speaks to me.
You're welcome.
Wow. All right, Mark, what else do you have to say about this movie?
So I had a question for Kelly. If 23-year-old Billy Zane, if Kelly and I were out sailing and I got stuck on his sailboat and she was with Billy Zane on the other one, would you come back and try to save me, or would you just sail into the sunset with Billy?
I promise you, if it was Billy Zane himself, I would. But if it's the character that he plays in this movie, 100% nah.
So if it's just the actor Billy Zane, you would leave me to die on a sinking sailboat?
I mean...
Fair enough.
No, I wouldn't, obviously. No, if Billy Zane was acting like a moron, there's zero way I would put up with it. Because guess what? I don't put up with that BS.
Yeah, but I mean, but you're making this all about Billy Zane, and like it has nothing to do with me being on a sinking sailboat in the middle.
No, if you were on a sinking sailboat, regardless of who showed up, I would save you.
What about Bruce Campbell?
No, I would save you.
Thank you. Okay.
No, truly. Like, it has nothing to do with who shows up on my boat. If you're sinking, I'm coming for you.
Well, I appreciate that. So the scene at the end where, I don't even know how, but Zane got back onto their boat.
Yeah, and you think it's over. Well, obviously we didn't think it was over because you think, like, they shoot flares into his life raft and there's no one on it, so like he probably fell off and died, like, sorry. And so Nicole Kidman is just laying back and Sam Neill's like, I'll shampoo your hair.
Yeah, and he's making her breakfast. Like, first of all, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but I would never go back and look for that guy. Like, just go, just leave. The guy is screwed. You almost should have, if you would have killed him, because there was a scene where she shot him with a harpoon and she could have killed him. It's almost meaner to throw the guy in a life raft and like throw him out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Can you be more Pacific?
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. They like, for whatever reason, like went back and like found his raft thing, but he wasn't on it. And then he somehow got on the boat when she was washing her hair with her eyes closed. He started rubbing her hair.
Because it's good for plot.
I know. She thought it was her husband, and a struggle ensued. And Sam Neill ended up shooting a flare like a sniper through a sail at a shadow of his wife, and Billy Zane struggling. The flare ended up in Billy Zane's mouth, which like burned his head from the inside, and he fell off the boat.
Yeah. No, like shoot a flare into Billy Zane's mouth is like, something that I just have, since I've seen this movie, it's been in my vernacular. So guess what? there were a couple scenes that they filmed that didn't make the movie. Number one, Sam Neill apparently was attacked and tormented by a shark while he was on Billy Zane's ship, and they didn't include it in the final cut.
I thought that was a cool scene though, where he's stuck, beneath deck, breathing through the tube, and he sees some fish, and he's like, how do these fish get in here? So he investigates, holds his breath, and he finds the hole. He kicks his way out, and that's how he manages his way out. So that was pretty cool. A shark scene would have been kind of cool too, though.
Well, yeah, so apparently they did not include that. But also, they didn't originally have Billy Zane die in the original cut. And Warner Brothers was like, this is too ambiguous. And so we need to actually shoot something that we know he dies. So Mark, literally the life raft thing. Yeah. That is how the movie ended. And Warner Brothers was like, can we actually see him die? Because we don't know.
See, that's such a movie studio thing to do, to do that and ruin the end of a movie. I felt like this guy's off on this. He's got a harpoon in his shoulder, basically. He's off in the middle of the ocean on a life raft. It's a worse punishment than just killing him. Leave it at that. Don't get this unrealistic ending of the guy somehow getting back on the boat and almost killing you and then shooting a flare. That's like a stupid movie producer executive guy saying this is all it has to end or whatever, in my opinion.
No, it's true though, because sometimes people, quote unquote, think they know best, and guess what? It's fine if we don't have everything neatly tied up in a bow.
Just like The Sopranos.
See? That's why, yeah, it's one of the best endings ever. Mark, what else do you have to say about Dead Calm? Is this literally the first time you've seen it now? When we started it, I asked you, and you're like, I don't know, I guess we'll find out.
No, I've never even heard of the movie before. Literally. I've never heard of it. Never seen it. Didn't even know it existed. The only other thing I wrote down, what I thought was funny, is she was trying to tune her radio, and one was frequency, and then the other one said squelch. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, because the word squelch, I said to Mark, squelch became a new word in our vernacular, or a common word, after we put the closed captioning on Stranger Things. It's always squelching. And Mark, what did you read that squelch meant in this context?
It had something to do with radio frequencies. If it's coming in weak, you turn the squelch up or down to make it stronger or weaker or something. So that's what squelch means.
Isn't that weird? Everyone, if you know what squelch means, I guess we're dumbasses.
It's a weird word. They should probably come up with a new word for it.
Aw, Mark. All right, should we rank this movie?
Yes.
All right, on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being you hated it. 10 being it's a perfect movie. We need to use flares, because this is literally the thing that I think about every time I think about the movie Dead Calm. How many flares do you give Dead Calm?
I'm going to give it 5 flares.
Whoa! Oh my God, Mark. You wanted to watch this movie so hard, I thought you were going to effing love it, and you're giving it 5? Why?
I'd never seen it. I just saw it, I saw it existed, and I thought we should watch it. So, it kind of lacked maybe the character development.
Wait, they literally established their characters by saying he's in the military and she's a mom and she's going to pick him up and their son died. So what else do you want?
Well, we have no backstory on Billy. right? I mean, he just randomly kills people in the ocean. We know very little about either of the other two characters. I felt like, some of the situations were uncomfortable. Some of the action was good, and there was some suspense thanks to Benji, the dog.
That dog can go F itself.
Yeah. They should have thrown that. If they would have just thrown that dog overboard right away. Just kidding. Yeah. The dog was problematic throughout the film, like towards the people. It didn't really help. It could open doors. I feel like it they locked Billy Zane in a room. I feel like, and the dog opened the door or something. But I don't know. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was entertaining for a Thursday night.
Wow. Okay, Mark, guess what? I'm calling you out on this, but I'm also just giving it a 6. So
See?
No, I know, but you have been wanting to watch this movie for so long. I assumed I'm going to love it no matter what. And this just proves I appreciate that you don't form your opinion on your expectation.
Yeah, I really had very little expectation. I just saw that it was this movie with Nicole Kidman, which was a thriller, whatever, that I'd never seen before. And I thought, we can watch this for Horror Rewind and see how it goes. So that's what happened.
Yeah, it basically happened. So listen, friends, I'm probably going to record on this separately, but I have to tell you that I watched the first 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful, and I'm feeling all sorts of ways. And so tweet me about it, email us, tell me how you're feeling, because I'm feeling so many emotions, and I don't know how to feel about this new Los Angeles season, and I need to hear from fellow fans. Mark, how are you feeling about it?
All I know is that you've been watching it a lot, and you call me in to watch certain scenes, and you really love it.
Oh, I love it so much. So I need to hear from fellow fans, and how do I get through this tumultuous time?
Hey, where are my fellow horror readers at? Woohoo! So if you can't get enough from watching horror movies, then you got to start reading horror books, right? So the first, actually the only book I'm going to talk about today is, it's my first foray into Clive Barker. So if you listen to the podcast regularly, you'll know that I didn't really have any sort of feeling about Clive Barker. I just kind of put my nose up at Hellraiser because I hadn't seen it and I didn't know how amazing it was. And so that was, if you haven't listened to that episode of me and Kelly realizing that Hellraiser is amazing, you should go and listen to that. So after that, and obviously after, understanding his connection to Candyman and that he wrote the short story that Candyman is based on and everything, and just learning more about him, I realized that I really needed to start somewhere reading Clive Barker. Now, I've learned that more recently he's really into more of the high fantasy, but he really started his writing career with horror. And so I decided, I'm a huge short story fan, as you guys know, if you listen to my little book corner here. So I got the Books of Blood, volumes 1 to 3. I'm only going to discuss volume 1. I've only read volume 1 so far. I took a break and read a novel. So I'm going to be starting volume 2 now later today. But, oh my gosh, it's just one of those experiences, just like Hellraiser, where it's where has this movie been all my life? That's how I feel about these short stories. Where has this Book of Blood been all my life? Clive Barker has such a way with words. This is the intersection of literary fiction and horror. He has this high sense of language that I just am absolutely addicted to. I couldn't stop reading his it's funny to say beautiful because obviously his stories are macabre. But of course, you wouldn't be here if you didn't think that horror can be beautiful, right? So I picked up Books of Blood, like I said, and it has volumes 1 through 3 in it. I did it the old-fashioned way at Barnes & Noble. I know I should say I'd support an indie bookstore, and I usually do, but, in these pandemic times, Barnes & Noble was the quickest fix for me to get some new books. So I'm going to discuss the 6 stories, but again, when I'm doing books, I don't like to be too spoilery because I want you to go out and read it and encourage you to. And if you have read them, then you know exactly how amazing they are. The first story is really short. It's just called The Book of Blood, and it's sort of like a setup story to the rest. It's almost like an introductory story. And right when I read that one, I was like, okay, I am in love with Clive Barker's writing. It's funny because I brought some more. Now I went to an indie bookstore and I got some more Clive Barker books that I haven't dove into yet. But my dad saw them, and my dad has always loved reading. He loves horror, but he loves every genre. And I was like, oh my gosh, have you gotten into Clive Barker? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I've tried, but I don't really like his characters. And, that was kind of his feeling. And I'm like, oh my God, well, I'm addicted, so whatever. And pretty soon I noticed he was stealing Clive Barker books from my house. So I don't know. I think maybe my talk of it might have got him excited again. And then we both just talked about the beauty of Barker's language. So I won't say much about the Book of Blood. Like I said, it's kind of the first short story in the book. The book itself is called Book of Blood, not to be confusing. The second story, The Midnight Meat Train. So I saw this movie years ago. I think the movie's about 10 or 15 years old. It's got Bradley Cooper in it, of all people, and Brooke Shields, if I recall. And obviously, the story is quite short, so the movie really takes a lot of, license to sort of be quite different. But now I think I'm going to go back and watch The Midnight Meat Train because I remember at the time thinking it was pretty decent, but now I'm just like even more intrigued to try watching it again. I love the story. I loved the concept. It's one of those things where you kind of forget what happens in the movie, so it was kind of a fun surprise still. And it kind of just I think this is a good way to sort of get into Clive Barker because I haven't read Hellbound Heart yet, which is what Hellraiser is based on. And of course, I think things start to get really weird in that. So yeah, The Midnight Meat Train, again, I think it's like a good sort of start into the Clive Barker world. I'm guessing. I'm not deep enough to really know. The second story, The Yattering and Jack, I heard that there is a movie of this. So I'm very intrigued by that. It is very, oh gosh, it's about this devilish creature trying to torture this guy, but the guy isn't really like reacting the way he wants him to. And it's just this awesome back and forth. And it is sort of absurdly funny, and I loved it. I'm flipping through the book here. Oh, Pig Blood Blues. This one is amazing. It takes place in a prison, or I think it's more like a youth detention center, like a juvenile detention center. But I mean, it feels very prison-y. And I don't want to give it away, but I kind of do. But there's just this part in here that made me smile so hard. It's very gruesome. I mean, you have to like gore. These series of short stories have a lot of sex in them too, so it's very Hellraiser feeling. But oh my gosh, you have to read these stories. I mean, please, please, please. Okay. Next. Oh, this one made me think of Kelly. It's called Sex, Death, and Starshine. Kelly's nickname. Just kidding. No, it made me think of her because it takes place in the theater. And I was like, oh, Kelly has to read this. It's just about, it really, at the heart of the story, it really is about like the love of theater and performing and the sort of addiction to being on stage and the lights and the background and the life of a theater person. So it made me think of how much Kelly loves to be in theater in whatever form. And and the last story is called In the Hills, the Cities. This one, and I'm not, by saying it's my least favorite, it doesn't mean I don't like it. And it's one of those things too where I was sort of forced to read it in like really small chunks, and so that might have informed why it's not necessarily my favorite story. But it is very high concept. You really have to wrap your mind around it, but once you do, it kind of breaks your brain. And so I very much like that, but I think there was just a few elements of it that I got a little bored in a few times. Maybe it went on a little bit too much on a few things, but otherwise, holy crap. You guys, if you have not read the Books of Blood, you must. So I will probably come back and talk about the second installment once I'm done reading that. It's I think 5 stories, so I'm really excited to talk about those. And oh my gosh, if you can check out Clive Barker in any way, whether it's just watch Hellraiser or Candyman or read these stories, or I think there is a new series that's going to be coming out, I think on Hulu, that's based on some of these stories. So I'm so excited. And he really is one of the masters of horror. So that is just my take on Books of Blood. It's really, really fucking good. Okay, I'll see you in the horror book section. Bye, all.
Until next time, we will see you scrolling through the horror section.
Bye.